Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 430th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that they ceased not to fare forwards in high state, the men with Ali's men, and the women with his wife, till they came to the mansion where they alighted, and brought the mules and their burdens into the midst of the courtyard. Then they unloaded them, and warehoused the goods, whilst the merchants' wives went up with Ali's family to the saloon, which they found as it were a luxuriant garden, spread with magnificent furniture. They sat in mirth and good cheer till noon, when they brought them up for the midday meal, all manner of meats and sweetmeats of the very best, and they ate and drank costly sherbets, and perfumed themselves afterward with rose-water and scented woods. Then they took leave and went home, men and women, and when the merchants returned to their places, they sent presents to the husband according to their condition, and their wives likewise sent presents to the wives, so that there came to them great store of handmaids and negroes and mamelukes, and all kinds of goods, such as grain, sugar, and so forth, in abundance beyond account. As for the Baghdad merchant, the landlord of the house, he abode with Ali, and quitted him not, but said to him, Let the black slaves and servants take the mules and the common cattle into one of my other houses to rest. Quoth Ali, They set out again tonight for such a place. Then he gave them leave to go forth and camp outside the city, that they might start on their journey at night come. Whereupon, hardly believing that they were dismissed, they took leave of him, and, departing to the outliers of the city, flew off through the air to their several abodes. So Ali and his house owner sat together till a third of the night was past, when their colloquy ended, and the merchant returned to his own house, and Ali went up to his wife and children, and after saluting them said, What hath befallen you in my absence all this time? She told them what they had suffered of hunger and nakedness and travail, and he said, Praise be Allah for safety. How did you come? Answered she, O my lord, I was asleep with my children yesterday night, when suddenly and unexpectedly one raised us from the ground, and flew with us through the firmament without doing us any harm. Nor did he leave flying with us till he set us down in a place, as it were an Arab camping ground, where we saw laden mules and a travelling litter borne upon 2 great mules, and around it servants, all boys and men. So I asked them, Who are you, and what are these loads, and where are we? And they answered, We are the servants of the merchant Ali of Cairo, son of the merchant jeweler, who hath sent us to fetch you to him in Baghdad. Quoth I, Tell me, is it far or near hence to Baghdad? They replied, Near. There lieth between us the city but the darkness of the night. Then they mounted us in a litter, and when the morning dawned, we found ourselves with thee, without having suffered any hurt whatever. Quoth he, Who gave you these dresses? And quoth she, The chief of the caravan opened one of the boxes on the mules, and taking out thereof these clothes, clad me and thy children each in a suit. After which he locked the case, and gave me the key, saying, Take care of it, till thou give it to thy husband. And here it is safe by me. So saying, she gave him the key, and he said, Dost thou know the chest? Said she, Yes, I know it. So he took her down to the magazine, and showed her the boxes, when she cried, This is the one whence the dresses were taken. Upon which she put the key in the lock, and opened the chest, wherein he found much raiment, and the keys of all the other cases. So he took them, and fell to opening them, one after another, and feasting his eyes upon the gems and the precious ores they contained, whose like were not found with any of the kings. After which he locked them again, took the keys, and returned to the saloon, saying to his wife, This is the bounty of Almighty Allah. Then bringing her to the secret slab, he turned the pin, and opened the door of the closet, into which he entered with her, and showed her the gold he had laid up therein. Quoth she, Whence came all this to thee? It came to me by the grace of my Lord, answered he. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 431st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king. Then when Ali's wife had looked upon the gold, she said to him, Whence came all this to thee? It came to me by the grace of my Lord, answered he. When I left thee in my troubles, I shipped at Bullock for Demeta, and met the friend there, who forwarded me to Damascus. In brief, he told her all that had befallen him, from first to last. Said she, O my lord, all this cometh by boon of thy father's blessing, and orisons which he prayed for thee before his death, saying, I beseech Allah to cast thee into no straits, except he grant thee ready relief. So praised be Allah Almighty for that he hath brought thee deliverance, and hath quitted thee with more than went from thee. But Allah upon thee, O my lord, return not to thy practice of associating with doubtful folk, but look thou and fear Allah, whose name be exalted, both in private and in public. And as she went on to admonish him, he said, I accept thine admonition, and beg the Almighty to remove the froward from amongst us, and establish us in his obedience, and in the observance of the law, and the practice of his prophets, on whom be blessings and peace. After that, Ali and his wife and children were in all solace of life and gladness, and he opened him a shop in the merchant's bazaar, and stocking it with somewhat of the jewels and bullion, sat therein with his children and white servants. Presently, he became the most considerable of merchants of Baghdad, and his report reached the king of that city, who sent a messenger to command his attendants, saying, Answer the summons of the king who requieth thee. He replied, I hear, and I obey, and straightway prepared his present, and he took 4 trays of red gold, and filling them with jewels and precious metals, such as no king possessed, went up to the place, and presented himself before the presence, kissed the ground between his hands, and wished him endurance of goods and glory in the finest language he could command. Said the king, O merchant, thou cheerest our city with thy presence. And Ali rejoiced, O king of the age, thy slave hath brought thee a gift, and hopeth for acceptance thereof from thy favour. Then he laid the 4 trays before the king, who uncovered them, and seeing that they contained gems, whose fellows he possessed not, and whose worth equalled treasuries of money, said, Thy present is accepted, O merchant, and inshallah, we will requite thee with its like. And Ali kissed his hands, and went away. Upon the king called his grandees, and said to them, How many of the kings have sought my daughter in marriage? Many, answered they. And he asked, Hath any of them given me the like of this gift? Whereto they replied, No, not one. Not one of them hath its like. And he said, I have consulted Allah Almighty by lot as to marrying my daughter to this merchant. What say ye? Be it as thou reckest, answered they. Then he bade the eunuch carrying the 4 trays into his seraglio, and going into his wife, laid them before her. She uncovered them, and seeing therein that whose they like possessed not, no, nor a fraction thereof, said to them, From which of the kings hast thou these? Perchance one of the royalties that seek thy daughter in marriage. Said he, No, not so. I had them of an Egyptian merchant, who is lately come to this our city. Now when I heard of his coming, I sent to command him to us, thinking to make his acquaintance, so happily we might find with him somewhat of jewels, and buy them for our daughter's trousseau. He obeyed our summons, and brought us these 4 trays as a present. I saw him to be a handsome youth, of dignified aspect, and intelligent as elegant, almost as should be the son of kings. Whereupon my heart inclined to him at sight, and my heart rejoiced in him, and I thought good to marry my daughter to him. So I showed the gift to my grandees, who agreed with me that none of the kings hath the like of these, and I told them my project. But what sayest thou? And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 332nd night, she continued, It hath showed me and reached me, O auspicious king, that the king of Baghdad, after showing the presents to his wife, and highly praising Ali the merchant jeweller, and informing her of the proposed marriage, asked, But what sayest thou? She replied, O king of the age, the ordering of this affair is in Allah's hands, and thine, and whatso Allah willeth shall come to pass. rejoined the king, "If it be his will, I will marry her to none other than this young man." He slept on this resolve, and on the morrow he went out to his divan, and summoned Ali and the rest of the merchants of Baghdad, and when all came bade them to be seated. Then said he, "Bring me the Qazi of the divan." And they brought him, whereupon the king said to him, "O Qazi, write the contract of marriage between my daughter and the merchant Ali the Cairene." But Ali said, "Thy pardon, O Lord the Sultan. It befitteth not that a traitor such as I be the king's son-in-law." Quoth the king, "It is my will to bestow this favor upon thee, as well as the Wazrat." And he invested him forthwith with the wazir's office and minstrel robes. Then Ali sat in the chair of the Wazrat and said, "O king of the age, thou hast bestowed on me this, and indeed I am in honor by thy bounties. But hear one word I have to say to thee." He replied, "Say on, and fear not." Quoth Ali, "Since it is thine august resolution to marry thy daughter, thou wouldest be better to marry her to my son." Quoth the king, "Hast thou then a son?" And Ali replied, "Yes." "Send for him forthwith," said the king. Thereupon answered Ali, "Hearkening and obedience," and dispatched a servant to fetch his son, who came, and kissing the ground before the king, stood in an attitude of respect. The king looked at him, and seeing him to be yet comelier than his daughter, and goodlier than she in stature and proportion and brightness and perfection, said to him, "What is thy name, O my son?" "My name is Hassan, O our lord the Sultan," replied the young man, who was then 14 years old. Then the Sultan said to the Qazi, "Write the contract of marriage between my daughter Husn al-Wujud and Hassan, son of the merchant Ali the Cairene." So he wrote the marriage contract between them, and the affair was ended in the goodliest fashion, after which all in the divan went their way, and the merchants followed the Wazir Ali, escorting him to his house, where they gave him joy of his advancement and departed. Then he went in to his wife, who, seeing him clad in the Wazir's habit, exclaimed, "What is this?" When he told her all that had passed from first to last, and she joyed therein with exceeding joy, she sped the night, and on the morrow he went up to the divan, where the king received him with especial favor, and seated him closing by his side, said, "O Wazir, we propose to begin the wedding festivities, and bring thy son in to our daughter." Replied Ali, "O our lord the Sultan, whatso thou deemest good is good." So the Sultan gave orders to celebrate the festivities, and they decorated the city and held high festivities for 30 days, in all joy and gladness, and at the end of which time Hassan, son of the Wazir Ali, went into the princess and enjoyed her beauty and loveliness. When the queen saw her daughter's husband, she conceived a warm affection for him, and in like manner she rejoiced greatly in his mother. Then the king bade build for his son-in-law Hassan Ali's son a palace beside her own. So they built him with all speed a splendid palace, in which he took up his abode. And his mother used to tarry with him some days, and then go down to her own house. After a while, the queen said to her husband, "O king of the age, Hassan's lady mother cannot take up her abode with her son and leave the Wazir, neither can she tarry with the Wazir and leave her son." "Thou sayest sooth," replied the king, and bade edify a third palace beside that of Hassan, which being done in a few days, he caused hither all the goods of the Wazir, and the minister and his wife took up their abode there. Now the 3 palaces communicated with one another, so that when the king had a mind to speak with the Wazir by night, he would go to him, or send and fetch him, and so with Hassan and his father and mother. On this wise they dwelt in all solace and in the greatest happiness. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 433rd night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the king and the Wazir and his son ceased not to dwell in all solace, in the greatest happiness a while, till the king fell ill, and his sickness grew on him. So he summoned the lords of his realm, and said to them, There is come upon me a sore malady, peradventure a mortal. and I have therefore summoned you to consult respecting a certain matter on which I would have you counsel me as you deem well. They asked, What is the matter of which thou would take counsel with us, O king? And he answered, I am old and sickly, and I fear for the realm after me from its enemies. So I would have you all agree upon someone, that I may proclaim him king in my lifetime, and so ye may be at ease. Whereupon quoth they with one voice, We all approve of thy daughter's husband Hassan, son of the Wazir Ali, for we have seen his wit and perfect understanding, and he knoweth the place of all great and small. Asked the king, Are you indeed agreed upon this? And they answered, Yes. Rejoined he, Peradventure, ye all say this to my face of respect for me, but behind my back you will say otherwise. However, they all replied, By Allah, our word is one, and the same in public and in private, and we accept him frankly and with heartiness of heart and breadth of breast. Quoth he, Since the case is thus, bring the Qazi of the holy law and all the chamberlains and viceroys and officers of state before me tomorrow, and we will order the affair after the goodliest fashion. We hear, and we obey, answered they, and withdrawing notified all the Olema, the doctors of the law, the chief personages among the emirs. So when the morrow dawned, they came into the divan, and having craved and obtained permission to enter, they saluted the king, saying, Here are we all in thy presence. Whereto he made reply, O emirs of Baghdad, whom will ye have to be king over you after me, after I may inaugurate him during my lifetime before the presence of you all? Quoth he in one voice, We are agreed upon thy daughter's husband Hassan, son of the Wazir Ali. Quoth he, If it be so, go all of you and bring him before me. So they all arose, and repairing to Hassan's palace, said to him, Rise, come with us to the king. Wherefore? Asked he, and they answered, For a thing that will benefit both us and thee. So he went in with them to the king, and kissed the ground before his father-in-law, who said to him, Be seated, O my son. He sat down, and the king continued, O Hassan, all the emirs have approved of thee, and agreed to make thee king over them after me, and it is my purpose to proclaim thee whilst I yet live, and so make an end of the business. But Hassan stood up, and kissing the ground once more before the king, said to him, O my lord the king, among the emirs there may be many who are older than I and greater of worth. Acquit me therefore of this thing. But all the emirs cried out, saying, We consent not but that thou be king over us. Then said Hassan, My father is older than I and he are one thing, and it befits not to advance me over him. But Ali said, I will consent to nothing, save whatsoever contenteth my brethren, and they have all chosen and agreed upon thee. Wherefore gainsay thou not the king's commandment, and that of thy brethren. And Hassan hung his head, abashed before the king and his father. Then said the king to the emirs, Do you all accept him? We do, answered they, and recited thereupon 7 Fatimas. So the king said, O Qazi, draw up a legal instrument testifying of these emirs that they are agreed to make king over them my daughter's husband Hassan. The Qazi wrote the act and made it binding on all men, after they had sworn in a body the oath of fealty to Hassan. Then the king did likewise, and bade them take his seat on the throne of kingship, whereupon they all arose, and kissed King Hassan's hands, and did homage to him, and swore fealty to him. And the new king dispensed justice among the people that day in fashion right royal, and invested the grandees of the realm in splendid robes of honor. When the divan broke up, he went in and kissed the hands of his father-in-law, who spake thus to him, O my son, look thou rule the lieges in the fear of Allah. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 434th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when King Hassan was quit of the divan, he went into and kissed the hands of his wife's father, and spake thus to him, O my son, look thou rule the lieges in the fear of Allah. Whereto he replied, O my father, through thy prayers for me, and grace and guidance of Allah will come to me. Then he entered his own palace, and was met by his wife and her mother and their attendants, who kissed his hands, and gave him joy of his advancement, saying, Be this day blessed. Next, he went into his father and mother, who joyed with exceeding joy, and that which Allah had vouchsafed him in the advancement to the kingship. And his father charged him to fear Allah, and to deal mercifully with his subjects. He passed the night in glee and gladness, ending with the usual short chapters of the Koran. He went up to the divan, whither came all the officers and dignitaries. He passed the day in dispensing justice among the folk, bidding to graciousness and forbidding ungraciousness, and appointing to place and displacing till day's end, when the divan broke up after the goodliest fashion, and all the troops withdrew and went their own way. Then he arose and repaired to the palace, where he found his father-in-law's sickness grown heavy upon him, and said to him, May no ill befall thee. At this the old king opened his eyes and said, O Hassan. And he replied, At thy service, O my lord. Quoth the old king, Mine appointed hour is at hand. Be thou careful of thy wife and her mother, and look thou fear Allah, and honor thy parents, and bide in awe of the majesty of the requiting king, and bear in mind that he commandeth justice and good works. And King Hassan replied, I hear and I obey. Now, after this, the old king lingered 3 days, and then departed into the mercy of Almighty Allah. So they laid him out, and shrouded and buried him, and held over him readings and prelections of the Koran, to the end of the customary 40 days. And King Hassan, son of the Wazir, reigned in his stead, and his subjects joyed in him, and all his days were gladness. Moreover, his father ceased not to be his chief Wazir on his right hand, and he took to himself another Wazir to be on his left. His reign was a prosperous and well-ordered, and he lived a long life as king of Baghdad, and Allah blessed him by the old king's daughter, with 3 sons, who inherited the kingdom after him. And they abode in the solace of life and its pleasures, till there came to them the destroyer of delights, and the severer of societies. And glory be to him who is eternal, and in whose hands are annulling and confirming. And of the tales they tell is one of the Pilgrim Man and the old woman. A man of the pilgrim once slept a long sleep, and awaking found no trace of the caravan. So he rose up and walked on, but lost his way, and presently came to a tent, where he saw an old woman standing at the entrance, and by her side a dog asleep. He went up to the tent, and saluting the old woman, sought of her food, when she replied, Go to yonder wadi, and catch the sufficiency of serpents, that I may broil of them for thee, and give thee to eat. Rejoined the pilgrim, I dare not catch serpents, nor did I ever eat them. Quoth the old woman, I will go with thee and catch some, fear not. So she went with him, followed by the dog, to the valley, and catching a sufficient number of serpents, proceeded to broil them. She saw nothing for it, saith the storyteller, but to eat, in fear of hunger and exhaustion. So he ate of the serpents. Then he was athirst, and asked for water to drink, and she answered, Go to the spring and drink. Accordingly, he went to the spring, and found the water thereof bitter, yet needs must he drink of it despite its bitterness, because of the violence of his thirst. Presently he returned to the old woman, and said to her, I marvel, O ancient dame, at thy choosing to sojourn in this place. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of these tales for today, till it be morrow.